There is an observation that I and several others have made that you will have heard over and over again on the podcast when we've been talking about Serling Fest, and that is that the program is great. The program is what brings us there and what starts the conversations, but it's only half the story. The other half is the people that you meet, the strangers who you instantly feel like you've known for years. There is no right or wrong way to do this event. Some people go to Serling Fest with a partner or friend and just stick to that. Some people go with their friends or family in a group and stick to that. And some reach out and connect with people they know from online who maybe they've never met before. It's all good, as long as you're there celebrating Rod Serling and all of his work, then that's the main thing. So last time we heard about the program itself. This time we'll hear from the people, and we'll start out with an email from Brian in New Hampshire. Brian says, "Hello Tom, I saw all 7 films on Friday and 4 presentations on Saturday before I had to head back to New England for work the next day. As for Friday, I loved seeing these shows on the big screen. In that setting, The Caterpillar from Night Gallery was the most impactful. On TV in a living room, this was a gory horror, but here at Serling Fest, the audience laughed at the right times, and I realized The Caterpillar is a dark comedy from start to finish. On Saturday, I liked the video tribute sent in by all, including Bill Mumy and Carol Burnett. The rock music presentation by Gail Flug was wonderful. And what a perfect way to end my participation than with your Christmas-themed presentation. Insightful, a well-told story. Finally, while I did not get to meet you, I did meet Nick Parisi and John and Fred from the Twilight Zone podcast. Thank you for your contribution to the Twilight Zone and Serling Fest 2024. Brian from New Hampshire." Well, Brian, thank you. I appreciate especially that you stuck around for my presentation before you had to head home. But I'm also glad that you got to see John and Fred from the Twilight Zone podcast. Now, they're people that I've listened to for years, and I still listen to them because I only listen to their episodes after I've completed my episode. So there's still some Twilight Zone ahead for me, but it was great to meet them. I wish I'd have got to spend more time with them, but that's a common story with this Serling Fest. But I'm glad you got to meet them, Brian. But I hope that those guys really realized how happy a lot of people were that they were there. They were there in an unofficial capacity. They weren't part of the program. They were just there to see it and hang out. But a lot of people loved that podcast, and a lot of people were really happy that they were there, so I hope they felt that. And thank you, Brian. I appreciate your email. So on to the voice clips, and we're going to start with Wes, and I'll be back to add some commentary between clips.
Hi, Tom. This is Wes Lehman from Southern Illinois, and I was going to give you a feedback on Serling Fest. And first of all, I didn't speak to you when you were there because you seemed to be swamped when you were in the room there with all the people selling things. So I would have said to you, just thank you for what you do. I really appreciate it, and it makes I get a lot of enjoyment out of your program. And the things that I liked about Serling Fest was I was very much unaware that Rod Serling had such a varied writing career. I didn't know that he wrote for radio programs. I didn't know that he had The Loner as another series. He did a lot more than what I was aware of. I mean, I knew about the Twilight Zone and the Night Gallery, but I really thought that was pretty much all he did. So it was a great education. I was a little disappointed that Mark Zekri didn't show up, and based on your recommendation, I did buy the Strand magazine to read the first story that Rod did in university. The only thing I could say is that at the end, Nick Parisi with his political comments just kind of ruined the whole stuff for me. It was his comments, his political comments were to the point that I just left Serling Fest. I didn't attend the ceremony, to unveil the statue in the park that I had planned on doing, because it just kind of took the wind out of me. So we just went home. And matter of fact, I'm recording this in a hotel room on my way home at this moment. But overall, I enjoyed your presentation a lot, and thank you very much. And I'm not going back to any more Serling Fest.
Thank you, Wes. Well, I was swamped in the best way. Yeah, I really enjoyed coming out after the presentation and meeting everyone. I think one of the strengths of the program, as you point out, is that, yeah, it's not just about the Twilight Zone. There is that diversity of all the different things that Rod Serling worked on. But I'm sorry it's going to be your last Serling Fest. I'm not sure what those comments were because, unfortunately, as I've mentioned a million times, I don't want to keep going on about why I didn't stick around a lot at Serling Fest because I was sick and everything. But yeah, I'm sorry it's going to be your last one, but I'm glad that you enjoyed what you did see. All right, thank you, Wes. So next up we have Jeff. Now, Jeff is a supporter over at the After Hours Club on Patreon. And back in 2021, there's a thing I do over there occasionally where, someone on a particular tier can jump on a Zoom call with me and we chat for 30 minutes. And I remember this because Jeff was such a cool guy that we ended up chatting for more than 30 minutes. And, you just think, if I ever get a chance, that'd be a guy that I'd like to have a beer with. Now, unfortunately, again, don't want to keep going on about this because of how my Serling Fest turned out. I didn't necessarily get to have a beer with people, but I did get to meet Jeff face to face instead of over Zoom and at least have a little chat. So take it away, Jeff.
Hi, Tom. Jeff Russell here. I saw your call for Serling Fest reactions, and I just wanted to share an observation or two that I imagine are not unique among your listeners who attended, but that I think are worth sharing all the same. So I drove down to Binghamton with my buddy Brian, who is a TZ newcomer, but who is certainly always up for a road trip. As a non-diehard fan attending the event, I thought he had a really interesting perspective, and even just after the first night in Binghamton, he remarked at how cool it was that everyone there seemed to have this unspoken connection that comes from sharing a common passion and finding people to share it with. It's a rare thing, and the good vibes really seem to flow from that all weekend. And setting aside certain things that were obviously cool, like meeting members of the Serling family, seeing the carousel, so on, I think he's really right on the money and really captured the essence of the event. And I don't mean to be cloying or anything, but these days it's really great to have something that connects and unites people, especially in ways that have nothing to do with or completely separate from, politics, social divisiveness, things like that. Serling Fest was really a welcome respite. Everyone was there to celebrate this great artist and, of course, to do some merrymaking along the way. And on that subject, as an aside, I find that sometimes I feel young, like I could even still be in my 20s, but then I spend a couple of days in a college town seeing and hearing college kids, and nope, I'm definitely not in my 20s anymore. Anyway, it was great to see everyone, including you, Tom, and thank you for your many contributions to making it a great event. Take care.
Thank you, Jeff. I know what you mean on all counts, especially not being 20 years old anymore. But the perspective of your friend Brian, who was along for the ride, I think is really interesting. And we're going to come back to that a bit later on. But obviously there's people there who are along for the ride with their partner or their friend or whatever. And generally speaking, the feedback that I've heard of people is really positive as well. So thank you for sharing that, man. And it was good to finally meet you. Okay, so next up is a Twilight Zone podcast host himself, although I don't think he mentions it in this clip, so I'm going to mention it for him. His name is Joe Mayer, and he does a show called The Key of Imagination, which is on your podcatcher, but it's also on YouTube as well. And if you prefer your Twilight Zone coverage to be of a more thoughtful and considered variety, then I think you'll really like Joe's show. And I think one of the things that I've kind of regretted over the years is that I haven't really mixed with other Twilight Zone podcasters on the air. It's never been intentional. I think it's really just been about time, and, just it does take up a lot of your spare time to do this. So you just kind of keep your head down and you do it. And there have been a couple of things here and there. So it was nice to actually connect with another Twilight Zone podcaster. So here's Joe.
Hi, Tom. Joe Meyer here with some thoughts on Serling Fest. First and foremost, thanks again to all of the people involved through the foundation for making the event the success that it was. And thanks to you for the work that you did in pulling us all together. I'll do my best to be concise. I actually want to comment on two things. First, like many I'm assuming, I had never seen the Grady Everett for the People production before. I believe that it was said that this was the first of Rod's scripts to be produced for television, right? I'm going to try and walk the tightrope of not spoiling it for people, but I'll simply say this. I thought it was interesting that Serling was already starting to explore the father-son relationship. Grady is a rather shady individual, and he continually tries to convince anyone who will listen to him that he's doing all of this for his son. But of course, in reality, it's all about him. He's completely unwilling to sacrifice any part of his own life for the sake of his son. Now, I don't know if this was on purpose or if it was a bit of the Twilight Zone stepping in, but that same night the audience at Serling Fest was treated to 2 Twilight Zone episodes, one of which was the great In Praise of Pip, starring Twilight Zone royalty in Jack Klugman and Bill Mumy. Now, as I sat there watching the episode, something hit me. There's a kind of cosmic connection between Max from In Praise of Pip and Grady from For the People. Max knows that he's not living a good life, but he's only able to truly recognize the error of his ways when he's confronted by the potential loss of his son. Grady is a kind of precursor to the Max character, but he lacks the benefit of the power of the Twilight Zone to step in and help him see that sacrifice is the highest calling of service and love of our fellow man and for those we hold most dear. I won't say more on that because I don't want to give away anything for people who have not seen Grady Everett for the People. But I just found those 2 pieces to be interesting potential bookends. The second brief point has to do with your presentation. I thought Serling's approach in No Christmas This Year was interesting because of its message of the importance of maintaining sacred spaces where even politics should not be allowed to enter. In America, politics seems to infiltrate every aspect of our culture now. We've given it so much authority over our existence that it has reduced the spaces that we have available to us for experiencing awe and joy, 2 incredibly important elements for the maintenance of the human spirit. And you can't make them happen. They happen to you. But only if the conditions of your environment allow you to be open to such things. Politics is important. The need for governance is important. But it should not be a part of every area in which we reside. There should be spaces that transcend politics, places where the human spirit is all the governance we need. In one of the clips that we were shown in the first session of Serling Fest on Saturday, Serling offers an apology to an interviewer, I believe it was Mike Wallace, for what he believed was hokey thoughts, as in corny or saccharine. In fact, we need more hokey. At Serling Fest, people gathered, They remembered, they laughed, they cried, they shared. It was hokey. And it was wonderful.
Thank you, Joe. I think looking at Rod Serling's early stuff and just seeing the seeds of what he would later become as a writer is one of my favorite things to do. And I think from the sounds of it, it's one of yours as well. So it was good to spend time with you, man, and good to meet you. So thank you. Now, next up is a young lady called Cassie. Now, Cassie, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit here because when I first went to Serling Fest in 2019, Cassie was there and she sent me a very sweet message afterwards saying, you know, I enjoyed Serling Fest. I saw you there, but I felt a bit shy about coming over to say hello. Well, we rectified it this time, and shy would not be a word that I would use to describe Cassie. She was great. Life and soul of the party. And everyone in the group loved hanging out with Cassie. So I'm glad that I finally got to speak to you, Cassie. And let's hear your clip.
Hi, Tom, and everyone currently listening. My name is Cassie. I just wanted to begin by saying how grateful I am that Tom has given us this opportunity to talk about this year's Serling Fest, especially with it, of course, being the centennial celebration. I could go on for ages about the event, but I will try my best to keep it brief. So I've been attending the Serling Fest since 2019, and since then it has become a crucial part of my year. It's something that I look forward to near constantly throughout the year, not only because it's a chance to celebrate the works of Rod Serling that have influenced me for, the past decade now, since I first watched The Twilight Zone at age 15, but also because, on a more personal level, the Serling Fest is a yearly reminder to myself of the kind of person I aspire to be. This year in particular, seeing Tony Albarella's presentation, which was this amazing compilation of Rod Serling's interview clips, it's such a strong reminder to myself to be an independent thinker, to not be complacent in what I think I know, and to have the courage to ask the question, why? And it's something I truly love and treasure about attending the Serling Fest each year. But beyond the actual event itself, I absolutely love that the Serling Fest gives us all an excuse to travel to Binghamton and an excuse to meet fellow fans. This year, I met so many people that I just instantly connected with that I never would have met if not for this event. And this was well and truly one of the most fun weekends I have had in a very long time. Being able to go hang out with like-minded people after the day's events was just, for lack of an adequate term, incredible. So thank you again to Tom for giving us a chance to speak about the Serling Fest, and also to, of course, the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation and all those who contribute to organizing and running the event each year, because I can assure you, and I'm sure many others are very, very grateful for that.
Thank you, Cassie. I really like your comment there, especially about what it means to you. And it's a great reminder of being an independent thinker. And I think in these times that feel so tribal, everyone seems to be at an extreme kind of end of a spectrum, it seems sometimes. And really taking on the baggage of their tribe and the opinions of their tribe without really thinking about, well, is that really what I think? Is that really right? Is that really how we should be conducting ourselves? So I think we always need that reminder to question things and not to just align with things blindly, So I really enjoyed your feedback. Thank you, Cassie. So next up, good buddy of mine, the author of the Twilight Zone haiku, Chad, and we did a kind of debrief, Emmy, Zach and I, over in the After Hours Club, and one of the things I said about Chad is he's really become a kind of great showman in terms of the things he's done since he's published that book, the places he's gone to do readings and so on. And I'm really kind of proud of what he's become promoting his book and promoting the work of Rod Serling. So Chad, take it away.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Zach is to my right, drunk Emmy is to my left, and Harold from Buda, Texas is across from us, showing us a video on his phone. He says, "Tell me what's happening here. Can you see what's happening here?" There's silence. I say, "Shit's moving." Drunk Emmy blurts, "Says the poet," disgustingly affronted at my less than elegant phrasing. I laughed so hard I became the howling man. This is a laugh, and this is an escape that I needed more than I could have known when I made the travel plans months before. That was the magic of Serling Fest 2024. The magic was these people, this frenetic energy. The whispers of the short-lived, long-buried Twilight Zone, the animated series, which, reportedly, for a time, was big in Japan. The magic was this small tribe of people from all over the world who I knew I would be lucky to get to be around in person only once or twice in my life, but who I always would have an invisible connection to. Serling Fest 2024 was the kind of surreal, mirror image-like experience. Binghamton was all the same, but also so different. 5 years ago, at my first and only other Serling Fest, I didn't know the major life changes, including a global pandemic, that were right around the corner. Serling Fest 2024 held the same magic, but was such a different experience. This year, somehow, I got to be behind the curtain. It was such an honor to do the pre-Serling Fest rundown on the Twilight Zone podcast, and to put together a Serling-related author event at Barnes & Noble. It was such an honor to get to present on the Serling Fest stage, to go on right after Tom, whose love for the show brought many of us there in the first place. It was such an honor to table and to be able to share that table with Chris Benedict and NASA. To be able to craft special inscriptions for special people who brought their Twilight Zone haiku books across states and across oceans. To be able to hand a copy to Anne Serling and express to her how much her book, As I Knew Him, My Dad, Rod Serling, inspired mine. The magic was walking through Recreation Park on the last day, standing on the hallowed ground that inspired Serling himself, riding the carousel, and witnessing the unveiling of the Rod Serling statue that we all helped to make happen. I had no idea what was around the corner right after Serling Fest 2019, and I have no idea what's around the corner now that Serling Fest 2024 has ended. But my big tall wish is that in a few years, everyone gets one more stop at Willoughby, and we can all be there again, this time getting signed copies of Tom's book and walking along the specially inscripted bricks on the way to one more pilgrimage to the statue. But no matter what happens, I'm incredibly fortunate and glad that I got to experience the magic one more time this year.
Thank you, Chad. I think what you touched upon there about, Binghamton's the same but different because we were all there in 2019. Well, not all of us, but that's the point of what you're saying. There's things that are the same, but there's different people there, different experiences, so it does evolve, and each one is great in their own way. And like I said on the last show, I spoke often about this is probably going to be my last time, but I don't know when the next time is going to be, but this is definitely not my last time, and I hope that you'll be there next time, Chad. Okay, so next up is Josh. Now, Josh has been a long-time friend of the show, and we've collaborated on something recently, which I won't really talk about yet, but he was a great help to me with some kind of audio stuff that I needed to do. All that will become clear down the line, but it was great to actually meet him in person. So take it away, Josh.
Hey, everybody. Josh Chambers here. And while Serling Fest has come and gone, our memories of the weekend won't dim anytime soon. What an amazing event. The information provided, be it through the panel discussions, Q&As, one-on-one chats with the experts and insiders, or just simply what we gleaned from each other, was invaluable. My wife commented before I left, "You will have no shortage of like-minded folks to hang with," and I certainly enjoyed your company. There were so many people there who had contributed to the podcast, or penned works in tribute of Serling, including Chadwick, Jim, Scott, Mark, and of course, Anne Serling. And how about Harold and those fantastic playing cards? Lastly, who would have thought I'd get to break bread and hang with my new pal Jason not once, but twice? So, while my wild years are a distant memory and my early to bed and early to rise sleep schedule is more akin to that of a local AM news anchor, I couldn't hang with those big dogs after hours, but I certainly appreciated the spirited updates and pictures, especially when I woke up and tried to backward scroll through what seemed to be hundreds of missed messages on Telegram. Perhaps if the fest continues past my retirement in a decade or so, I'll be able to join you all in those pub crawls in search of the perfect milkshake. But as much as Friday and Saturday screenings and discussions were, and what a marathon Saturday wound up becoming, the gathering in the park on Sunday was the perfect way to cap things off. Getting to ride the legendary carousel, imagining a young Rod enjoying his neighborhood public spaces, and getting to see the unveiling of that marvelous statue, it was all just pure joy. It was lovely to look around and see so many smiles. Here we were getting to collectively pay tribute to an artist whose work had touched us all. Lastly, Tom, finally getting to meet you in person was such a gift. You are as friendly and gracious as I imagined. And as I know so many others will attest, it was wonderful to hear you deliver a live performance of one of your great deep dives into the world of Serling. I hope you were able to look out into that audience and understand that so many of we who gathered would not have done so without your hard work over the years. So, to all of you, especially you, Tom, a toast to friendship in the zone and out.
Thank you for those lovely words, Josh. Again, one of the many people that I wish I'd got to spend more time with, but I'm glad I did get to spend at least some time with you. And you will be hearing from Josh again in the future, and we'll wait for that to happen. Now, next up is another Twilight Zone podcaster, Jason, and again, longtime friend and supporter of the show. Glad that I'm actually mixing with other Twilight Zone podcasters a bit more. But Jason is like a big, excited kid, as you will hear from his feedback in the best way. You know, lovely guy. And I'm glad I got to meet you, Jason. So take it away.
Greetings, Tom, from the land of 10,000 lakes. This is Jason Schwartz, host of the Twilight Zone Sandbox podcast, and on Twitter at Zone Sandbox. But most importantly, I am an After Hours Club member and Twilight Zone podcast superfan. And if I had to describe Serling Fest in 2024 in one phrase, I would say it was the best of times. I cannot describe the feeling of meeting people from the After Hours Club or just Twilight Zone fans in general and automatically being best friends. It was awesome. Quick side note, I didn't really know what Tom looked like. So when I got to Binghamton, I rushed to Barnes & Noble to see Chadwick and other Twilight Zone authors doing their thing, and I hoped Tom would be there. The only picture I'd seen of him was that like AI picture that was on the Serling Fest program, so I figured that was fake somehow, like he was a hunchback or something. I heard his voice, turned around. Nope, he's a tall, beautiful man with a granite jawline and a voice like cold brew at my favorite coffee house, deep, dark, and smooth. Next, I got to meet Zach and Emmy, and then I talked with the godfather of Twilight Zone on Twitter, Paul Gallagher, the Twilight Zone at the Night Gallery. And I got a picture with him to make everybody on Twitter jealous. As far as presentations go at Serling Fest, I love them all. I know it's kind of a cop-out, but it's true. I guess I'll really say, of course, I love Tom's presentation. Tom, you make anything better. That's just what you do, and it was great. I liked the Twilight Rounds by Christopher Benedict. That was awesome, and I also love listening to the Twilight Zone poems. I thought the music thing and the art thing were actually really cool, too. All of it was really good. I did miss the end one because I wanted to hang out with people. If it just would have been the weekend of presentations and hanging out and seeing all the cool Rod Serling stuff and seeing the statue, It would have been absolutely amazing if it was just that. But the best part was meeting everyone. Shout out to Carlos, who bought me a beer Friday night. Yours was the best story of why you sponsored a brick in Kickstarter I had heard all weekend. Obviously, thanks, Harold, for always leading the charge, and your beautiful wife as well. Our conversations about faith and spirituality in the Twilight Zone and beyond were wonderful. Oh yeah, and the cards. The cards are really cool. Thanks for Brian for the great conversation. Really great conversation. And walking back to the DoubleTree with me, because it was kind of sketch. And Mark, my kindred spirit, who shares my growing love for comedy in the Twilight Zone and secret Twilight Zone lore. Time helmets forever! Grace, lovely Grace, thanks for being the commentary during Friday night's presentation. Looks like I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue. Of course, thanks to Chadwick for giving me a ride Friday. My phone died and I couldn't even call a Lyft from Barnes & Noble. I didn't know what I was going to do. And taking me to dinner and just treating me like a brother. I hope we can collaborate soon. Thanks, Cassie, for allowing me to join the hero worship conversation with the fainting and the swooning. Thanks to Zach for fearlessly defending your Twilight Zone positions, your quick wit, and you're just kind of cool. I just want to hang out with you. And Emmy, whose reaction to the gin-soaked pumpkin pie shake will live rent-free in my head forever. And a very special thanks to After Hours Club member Josh. We had 2 breakfasts together. We sat with each other Saturday. We geeked out about all the merch. We bought stuff. And when I was about to walk to Recreational Park from the DoubleTree with all my luggage, you said no. And you gave me a ride, and we even rode the carousel together. You are my Serling Fest blood brother. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Of course, Tom, I didn't get to spend any real time with you. Luckily, I pushed my luck and I went to Recreational Park, even though my plane left at 1:40, and we got a chance to chat a bit. Oh yeah, thanks, Joe. Midwest Twilight Zone fans unite. Tom, I have always called you my 21st century Rod Serling, and now you're also my Henry Corwin. None of this was possible without you. Thanks, Santa. Oh, I'd also like to mention the conversation about the secret Twilight Zone lore. I didn't know that more people knew about the short-lived Twilight Zone animated series from 1971 to 1972, banned in the U.S. I've never seen any clips. I do possess a very illegal print of one of the Hello? Did you hear that? A very illegal print of one of the Hold on a second. Yeah, what do you want? I'm recording on a...
FBI, open up!
Thank you, Jason. Man, just such a good guy, such a fun guy to be around. And his show, The Twilight Zone Sandbox, is also a Twilight Zone podcast with one host, occasional guests sometimes. Different approach to me in some ways, but also really good at deep dives sometimes. One of the favorite episodes of mine that he did was a show that he did about connections between the Twilight Zone and the show The Beverly Hillbillies. And there's more there than you really realize. Now, of course I know the Beverly Hillbillies. I don't really watch it anymore. But Jason did such a good job of making that interesting that I really enjoyed it. So good to meet you, Jason. Now, if you've listened to the show for a long time, occasionally you would have heard Harold Clark from Buda, Texas, reporting in. Well, Harold was at Serling Fest, but he didn't come alone. Now, before I mentioned about people coming along with their partners, and their partners might be maybe more casual Twilight Zone fans or not as much of a Twilight Zone fan or really not exposed to it in as big a way as their partner. And this is the case with Harold's wife, Andrea, who came along for the ride. And let's hear what she had to say.
This is Andrea Clark reporting from Buda, Texas. I came to Serling Fest with my husband, Harold Clark. He was very excited to come and meet everyone that he has been interacting with on the podcast and other various mediums. And I was very pleasantly surprised at just how much camaraderie was instantly had amongst everyone that was there to celebrate Rod Serling's centennial. I was pleasantly surprised with the various presentations, the music presentation, and how Twilight Zone has affected so many different aspects of our culture and has just seeped into different parts of our linguistics and everything. I was pleasantly surprised to hear all of that. I think what I was most blown away by was just the one presentation where Serling was being interviewed by different people and just how well-spoken he was. I did not know that about him, so that was very, very interesting. I had a great time during the weekend at Serling Fest. My husband had an absolute blast, and it was wonderful meeting everyone, and it was wonderful watching my husband just build relationships with people that he greatly enjoys and admires online. So maybe we'll come again soon. All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
I think as Twilight Zone fans, because Rod Serling's work is out there, and occasionally we'll get something new that we haven't seen before, but a lot of the time we're talking about the things that we already know. It's always a great pleasure to hear from someone who is exposed to something new that they hadn't encountered before. So I really enjoyed hearing you, Andrea, talk about your reaction to the presentations. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it was so nice to meet you. I'm sorry that I never got to talk to you for more than a few moments, but well done to you for keeping Harold in check for 3 days, because Harold was living his best life, as you say, and just really enjoying every moment of it. So why don't we hear from the man himself, reporting in, Harold Clark.
Hey there, Tom. Harold Clark reporting in from Buda, Texas, talking about Serling Fest 2024. Overcome with emotion. We've heard that term before, used it possibly. Usually you can feel it when your favorite sports team wins a championship. Maybe you're listening to your favorite song. It brings back some memories. You find out another Godzilla movie is coming out, and you're overcome with emotion. Well, I was overcome with emotion in a very strange way. So it was Sunday, and we were all gathering at Recreation Park, getting ready for the statue unveiling in about an hour or so. So they opened up the carousel for everybody to ride, and we moseyed on down there, took our time. We enjoyed the artist mart and all that stuff, and got in line to get on the carousel. And there was a handful of us doing that, and got on there, and sure enough, it started up and went around, got up to full speed, whatever the speed of that carousel was. Went around about 2 or 3 times, and I was just enjoying it. I was in my happy place, and I realized that they were playing the song New York, New York. And that's when it hit me. And for whatever reason, I was overcome with emotion. I started crying. And Andrea, she was on the horsey next to me. She looked up and she saw that I was crying. She asked me why I was crying. And I thought about it, and I paused, and I just shook my head, and I said, just life. And it all hit me at that moment. part of it was that it was Sunday, so I knew it was the last day that we were going to be there. But it was also sitting on that carousel, knowing that, this is, something that Serling was inspired by, and, we're just blocks from his home, and we're getting ready to see the statue and all its glory, and then going back and just remembering the fantastic time that I had, the last, 3 days, and I'm thinking about all of this, and then I look over and I realize that I've been doing this with my wife Andrea, who's a very casual Twilight Zone fan. She's by my side, so it was a very special moment. But I'll say the highlight of the entire trip was Saturday night after Serling Fest was officially over with, and a handful of us went over to the Garage Taco Bar about 6 o'clock. And then, later in the evening, we shut that place down and we went over to Craft Bar and Kitchen. But, there was just a handful of us initially. And, we were just hanging out. And, it was great weather. They weren't blasting music, which was great. So we could actually sit around the little fire pit area there because all the tables were taken. Sit around and just talk and just shoot the bull. And as more people were exiting and coming on over, we started with 6, 7, 8, and then it grew to 10, 12, 15, and then as tables would empty, we'd like the blob go over to this table and go over to that table, and by the end of the night, we must have had 35 people there, I'd say, and it was great because, once we got a larger portion of people, we started just breaking up into different groups. And, for a good 30 minutes, I was in a group with Andy, Mark, Lisa, Jason, Grace, and Zach. And we talked all things Twilight Zone, finally getting around to, some serious talk about Twilight Zone. First Twilight Zone, you remember, scariest episode, just plain middle of the road episode, first episode to show to someone. So we just had a lot of good back and forth talking. I'm thinking, man, this is really what it's about. Then I branched off, and me and Andrea ended up meeting back over with Jason, and we had some really good spiritual discussions about Twilight Zone. As you know, I always put my spiritual goggles on, and we actually talked about Death Said Revisited. Jason actually brought up some points that he thought on it, and I thought, I hadn't given that consideration. So when we watched it on Friday night, we put the glasses on, and so we had a really good discussion about that. After that, I found myself eventually at a table with Emmy, Cassie, Jeff, and Todd, because Todd had just found out what was in the box. And I was trying to broker a deal between him and Emmy because Todd got the much valued Aragorn card, and I realized that Emmy was just about ready to turn into Gollum because she had quite the desire for that card. So that was fun. And then again, just other stuff. I was able to meet the Twilight Pone guys. Whoo! I was actually kind of sad because I thought I missed them on Friday night, and everybody told me, dude, you walked past them like 30 times. Well, I never knew what they looked like. But anyway, I was able to see them. We were able to, catch up and chat. They found out what was in the box. And then finally, near the end of the night, before they kicked us out, I joined up with a very lively discussion between Mark, Jason, Chad, and Zach about Slats, aka the short-lived animated Twilight Zone. That was fantastic. And then we shut the place down, and the smaller group of us headed over to Craft Bar and Kitchen, and we had to make sure went to Craft because everybody wanted to know about this chicken and waffle milkshake, and I said I would take the bullet for the team and buy it, get it, and I wanted to clink glasses with Emmy. And we were going to go with a churro shake, but I guess that was a seasonal thing, I guess. But the seasonal shake of the night was pumpkin pie. She was all excited about that. And we, sure enough, we clinked glasses and had a great time, except for they apparently put all the gin in the bottom, and that's what Emmy drank the very first time. But she was a trooper. She ate the whole thing. So anyway, one other thing that I wanted to bring up, I really appreciate everyone who hung out with Andrea, my wife. So I just want to give a special shout out to Kim, because she was one of the first people we met, and she's very casual Twilight Zone fan, 1, and 2. She's not on any of the forums. I mean, I knew about I knew everybody in the Twilight Zone podcast chat room that were going to come, so I felt familiar with them. Didn't know what they looked like necessarily, but she was coming in blind, and Thursday, all those worries went away, and then Friday when we ended up at Craft again, just everybody welcomed her with open arms, and she had a great time. So again, just appreciate that. Just want to finish up with just some quick hits to cover all the other things. Trying not to miss everything, but not go too long. So the cool weather the whole time, that was great. We avoided 95-degree temps. The pre-show visit with Joe, Kim, and Andy at Craft, and showing them for the very first time on this trip what's in the box. Learning that Joe is my brother from another mother, since we have so much in common regarding pop culture. Meeting Grace face-to-face for the first time on Friday morning, and having a delightful breakfast at Strange Brew. I also learned that Grace is my sister from another mother, since we have so much in common regarding very obscure music and public television tastes. I was stunned. Checking out the Bundy Museum, learning about time clock inventions and the creation of IBM. Had no clue about that. Seeing the Twilight Zone archive in the back of the Bundy Museum. Meeting up with Grace once more to go pick apples at the nearby Apple Hills Orchard. There were some wonderful views on the top of that hill there. So if you're ever back in town, go check out Apple Hills Orchard. Getting a surprise gift candle. You can never have too many fantastic smelling candles. Getting a fancy chocolate bar from Chad. Haven't eaten it yet. I might have to ration it out, shave it on some ice cream or something. Seen for the first time on Friday episodes of The Loner and the 2 Night Gallery episodes. I hadn't seen those 2 particular ones, so that was neat. The after-show gathering at Craft on Friday, and that's when we met all kinds of new people that night. Meeting Tom face-to-face for the first time and realizing 2 things. Tom is tall, and Tom has some absolute guns for biceps. I mean, he could crack walnuts with those things, man. Whew! But anyway, I was glad to meet him finally. All the Twilight Zone themed paintings on display at the theater. All the after-show gatherings on Saturday night, and said enough things about that. The recreation park, that was fantastic. It was great weather. Just, it was nice to hear the music of the carousel off in the distance, and going to see the artist market and having some tasty lemonade. And it was just a wonderful, relaxed Sunday morning. Enjoyed that there was such a large crowd at the statue unveiling, and then taking a walk to go see Serling's home. That was neat. Enjoying pizza at Abel's Pub, or just around the corner from Recreation Park. And we had some pizza with MK, Mark, Lisa, Cassie, and Gretchen. And I tell you, Abel's Pub is a true local neighborhood pub. Woo! It was a cool place. It was nice to get in and out of the heat. But yeah, that's a good old local pub, man. Everybody knows everybody, I guess. And then finally, ending our time with one last hurrah at the Iron Agave back in town with Tom and his friends. So, I didn't know what to expect from this. This is my first fan convention. I've been to comic book conventions and stuff, but I've never been to a Star Trek or a Star Wars convention or whatever, Firefly. I haven't even been to a Godzilla convention. So again, didn't know what to expect, but this blew me away. And that time, that 7 hours or so on Saturday night, that was one of the best 7-hour periods I've ever had, just because everybody was having a great time. I was enjoying myself. Everybody was enjoying themselves. We're just hanging out. We forgot about the cares of the world, all the division and all that crazy stuff. We were all from different backgrounds. We all had different beliefs and whatever you want. It didn't matter. We're all human. We're just coming out, hanging out, and enjoying our time together. So we hope to continue doing that with some of these chats and trying to do some virtual meetups with games and actual TZ talk stuff. We'll get to that on the chats later, but I'm looking forward to continuing this fellowship and just again, it was just a fantastic time. Again, Tom, thanks for being the guy to be the godfather of this, to spearhead all this and make everyone want to come to this very special Serling Fest. And who knows next time that we'll all get together in this big of a group, but whenever it is, I'll be looking forward to it. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Harold. One of my memories of Serling Fest is just what a force of nature Harold is. Life and soul of the party doesn't even come close to it. And on the night that I did go out, it was the Friday night, I was sitting at the table just trying to take it all in and speak to people. And next thing, Harold comes along and dumps out a big old bag of apples on the table. And it's like, okay. But by the end of the weekend, I realized that I'll never probably be surprised again by anything that Harold did, because his imagination when it comes to having fun is unparalleled. And again, Harold, man, I really wish that I'd been out on that Saturday night to really enjoy that. But that's one of the reasons I'm coming back. I need to have that night with everyone there, and I'm sure we'll do it. Thanks for bringing back those great memories. So to close things out, I've saved this one till last because it's from a longtime friend of the show and now a good friend of mine, Joe Brown, who really lays out his whole Serling Fest experience from start to finish. So I thought this was a great illustration of, if you go, what can you expect? What's that weekend going to look like, And Joe really tells you what that weekend's going to look like because he describes it to you here. So if you're like, well, maybe I'll go next year, but I'm not too sure, take a listen to Joe, see what he thinks, and maybe he'll give you a better idea. So take it away, Joe.
Hey, Tom. Joe Brown here. Just wanted to have some notes about the Serling Fest experience I wanted to share with you and everybody else. So Kim and I flew into Syracuse, rented a car, then drove down to Binghamton. We got to Binghamton about 5 o'clock, went downtown, and got a message from Andy Valentine. He said, hey, let's meet at the Craft Bar. So Kim and I went to the Craft Bar. Harold saw the message, and they were in town. So Harold and Andrea, they came over to the Craft Bar. And then while we were sitting around, telling stories and eating and drinking, Harold goes, hey, let's make this video about the basement and how we meet each other, about everybody's exciting basement. So when you saw that earlier in the Serling Fest meetup thread, that's what that was from. But it was a lot of fun doing that. And we stuck around there till about 10:30 or so. And then just eating sliders and telling stories. So then the next day on Friday, Kim and I had those tickets for the Centennial Trolley. And the way that worked out is, we got there early. We drove around Binghamton. And then we found Rod Serling's first home on Bennett Avenue. And so we checked that out, took a picture, went to Recreation Park to see the statue. It was obviously still wrapped up tight with the banding on it, so you couldn't look at it if you wanted to. And we saw the gazebo, the carousel house. Some kids were playing cricket on the baseball field. There's a big swimming pool, 2 other statues that were famously erected in the park. One of those statues was George F. Johnson. I learned a little bit about him. He was a philanthropist who provided aid to those in need during the Depression. And he's well revered in Binghamton, but I would say that would be shortly outdone come Sunday. So then we headed over to the Forum Theater and we prepared for the trolley ride. Saw Andy Valentine there. The Centennial Trolley was hosted by board member Andy Pollock and narrated by a historian named Roger Luther. Ann Serling was also there, and she was on board with us, and we visited several stops along the way. Kim and I sat like in the second row, and Andy sat to the left of us and the other on the left side. And as we were driving through, the trolley took us to the 3 homes that Rod lived in. Now, I didn't know there was 3 homes. I thought there was only 1. So I'm learning as we're going. So we go each by the 3 homes. We went to the middle school. We went to the grade school and then the high school. But one thing about the grade school that Rod didn't go to, but it was called Horace Mann Elementary. Now, obviously, those of us that are familiar with Changing to the Guard, Horace Mann was the person from Antioch College, but in the story it was the Rockwood Springs School for Boys, where it had the famous line, "Be ashamed to die until you've won some victory for humanity." Well, they named the elementary school after Horace Mann, but weirdly, the trolley historian never said anything about it. So anyway, so we get going. We get to see locations where the Serling family, they used to run a meat market in 4 different locations because of either the rent ran out and needed money or they wanted better locations. So we saw all those. We also drove by a Greyhound bus station, and the tour guide stated that some people say the setting for the episode Mirror Image was at this bus station. And I remember a podcast that you gave in 2019 about the last time you were at Serling Fest, and you referenced that you were at that bus station. We didn't go inside of it, but we did see it. We did get to see it from the outside. It was like a retro restoration, a really cool place. So then the trolley pulls into Recreation Park. So now, as we're getting there, we start to see these things, and everybody's with us. We get off the trolley. The group gathers around. We take a group picture. Then we take a little walk to the gazebo. We see that bronze plaque that's in the gazebo center that commemorates the Walking Distance episode. Then all of a sudden, the Parks and Recreation guy shows up and opens up the carousel. So now we're going to get to ride the carousel, and that was something else. So Kim and I go down there along with the rest of the group. We climbed on to the carousel, and this calliope starts playing the song Old Gray Mare. And the operator let all of us ride the carousel until the conclusion of the song. Then invited us to the middle, explained the working parts of it. It was really cool. So then, when that was over, Ann Serling is standing outside because she rode the carousel too. And I asked her to sign my book, and she was like, "Sure, I'll sign your book. What's your name?" And I told her, and she wrote it in there. It was a really cool moment for me. So then the tour went into town, and we saw some of the other buildings, and we ended up at a place called TechWorks. Well, this was a museum of sorts, and it included old IBM machines and other business equipment. And they served this food that's special to Binghamton called Speedies, which is basically chicken chunks on a skewer that uses a special marinated dressing that was created in Binghamton, and that's their claim to fame for food stuff, is the Speedies. So they gave those to us, and they're put on like a sandwich bread, and you eat it like a sandwich. It was pretty tasty. We liked it. I had one. So it was really good. But the tipper was, at the end of the eating session at TechWorks, Amy Boyle Johnston was there. So I got to talk to her for about 5 or 7 minutes. We talked about her book, Unknown Serling. I mentioned to her that the reason I know who she is because of the podcast. So she got excited about that. We did address the Planet of the Apes podcast and her involvement in that, and she got really excited. And then she gave about a 30-minute talk to the group that was there. And the one thing I will say about Amy, she's really passionate about research and making sure the information she's got correct. Because she mentioned a little story about meeting Ray Bradbury and brought up the rift between Serling and Bradbury and basically told Bradbury, "I've done my work, sir. You need to answer the question." Well, Ray got mad and he wouldn't answer it. So I could tell it still bothered her at that point, but she's a great historian. So then we leave there and we walk up to the forum, and the doors were opening and everybody was getting checked in, but because we had the trolley ride, we already had our bracelets. So we go into the building and we go into the merch room, and I see the After Hours Tour Night Gallery book. And there's a lady sitting there, and that's Lisa Benson. So I met her, and she's the wife of one of the authors, Jim Benson. So I was talking to her. Kim and I walked around. We bought some merchandise, mingled around. Then we decided to go over to the theater, and the marathon of programming was begun. So we watched a lot of those things, and about 9:20 we left, and we all headed over to the craft bar. So when we got there, Tom, you're there, Emmy was there, Gus was there, and Zach was there. So we introduced ourselves and we sat down and we began all sorts of conversations. And then everything started to go in motion. John and Fred from the Twilight Zone show up. Brian Lund shows up. Here comes Uncommon NASA. Harold Clark and Andrea show up. Andy Valentine's there. Jason Schwartz. And I know I'm forgetting some other folks that were there, and I apologize if you're listening, but I remember all of you that were there, and it was great. And then all of a sudden, Harold says, "Hey, what's in the box?" Well, we all know what's in the box because we all got an opportunity where Harold had bought these decks of cards, and each of us got a small pack that was identifiable by authors of books that were written about anything in literature. And what was unique about that, and I don't know if Harold intended this or not, but I think the reason we were now gathered together by Harold giving out those cards for us, it kind of put all of us as part of a connected tissue that we're all part of this massive deck. That was well done, Harold. I mean, how you did that. I don't think that was your intention, but if it was well played. So then, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, I'm at this bar, all these people, this setting is so surreal, and I only know most of you because of hearing your words or hearing your voices if you're joining in on the podcast or you leave audio commentary. Now, here I am sitting there, and I'm looking across, and I can see all your faces, and I get to know who you are and just start talking about the Twilight Zone and yourselves. That was awesome. So when the night was over, everybody left. We all got ready for the anticipation of really the main reason why we all came to Binghamton. It's threefold, but we know why we're there. So at that point, I'm thinking to myself, the stars are aligning. So Saturday comes, Kim and I get breakfast, we shoot over to the forum, and we got there early because of my fear of missing out. I just don't want to miss anything. I'm going to absorb all I could. So the presentation starts at 10 a.m., and there was really cool performances. I was looking at the program. They sent me an email about what to expect, and the Rock in the Twilight Zone. I kept thinking, what is that all about? And then Gail Fluke comes out and blew me away. I'm like, this is great. And Chad Boykin, who I met later that night at the Garage Taco Bar that I'll talk about in a minute, I finally got to hear his poetry because I don't own the book yet, unfortunately, but is him reading his own words and doing the haiku, and then Ricky Santer saying her poetry, how they both bounced off of each other. It was really good. It was better than I thought it would be because I didn't know what to expect. But Chad, if you're listening, nice job on that. So then, when that was done, Chris Benedict was out, and he's actually out before or after them. He did a really good job about boxing. I never really noticed the correlation, but he did a real good piece on that. So well done, Chris. So at lunchtime, before the 2:30 event, Kim and I go over to Little Venice. Roger Scarlett joined us, Ken Saul, Andrea and Harold Clark were there, and Grace. And I remember Grace, and I told her this. I remember her from early emails that you used to read on the podcast. I think as early as 2011, she was sending information to you and asking questions or commenting in that vein. So that was really cool. Got to talk to Grace. She sat with us. And then also Cassie May was there too. We shared stories, and then when that lunch was over, we go back to the forum. So then about 2:30 on the nose, here comes Nick Parisi. And he makes an announcement we're all waiting for. And for those of you that weren't at Serling Fest and you're listening to this, you got to understand that when you're buying tickets to Serling Fest, the foundation asks you, well, how did you hear about Serling Fest to cause you to buy tickets for the event? Well, Nick Parisi says the answer is the Twilight Zone podcast by Tom Elliott. So everybody gets, we're all cheering, interrupting and about this news that we already knew that's why most of us were there, but it got a huge response that the attendance at the Serling Fest was due to the podcast listeners. So Tom comes out on stage, and then what followed was an example of what I call example of great public speaking, crowd engagement at its finest. Tom, you did a very thoughtful, informative, and reflective analysis of Rod Serling and his stories around Christmas. It was structured in your typical podcast format, because I loved it when you say broadcast in 1962. It's just perfect. And Tom, you excelled at pacing the project. You interspersed the video clips to heighten the storyline, and you're on your game. And those of us who came to see Tom knew it was severe. He was severely under the weather, but we couldn't tell. Any breaks in your dialogue or interruptions due to coughs were handled as if it could happen to anyone and did not hint to illness. So, Tom, just want you to know we're all pulling for you because you pulled it off for us. The stars that aligned, some more. It was great. So next up was a spirited panel session with Mark DeWidziak and Serling, Mark Olshaker, who was Rod Serling's childhood friend, and then Jim Benson and Scott Selton shared their insights on Night Gallery After Hours Tour, and that was moderated by Mark DeWidziak, like a question and answer type panel. Very interesting. So the night was over about 8:30, and we all headed to Garage Taco. I got to meet Stuart from Dublin, and he showed me some collector items he's got. He's got a canceled check signed by canceled checks signed by Rod Serling. He's got an autograph by Buster Keaton. He's got some really cool stuff. Chad, I talked to Chad Boykin there, and we were sitting around the fire outside, eating Mexican food and just talking and drinking, having a great time. And then Brian Lund came over, and Gus Halwerda sat down with us, and we told some great stories, which is great spending time with everybody and the reasons why we were there. So here, let me put some reflective thoughts on some of this, because I'm kind of giving you a dialogue of how the time went for me. At this point, this is what Serling Fest really was for me. It was meeting those people that think like me, share ideas that I have and thought processes, and I didn't even know you until we all got there, but it was just like, it just gelled for me. Our conversations that we had, they were digging deeper into any of Rod Serling's work than Nick Parisi or Mark Scott Zickery did, or Martin Grams Jr., Stuart Stanyard, Brody, and DeWidziak did in their own writings. I felt that our conversations were deeper than what we were getting if I just read the words, because it was our own feelings and it was face to face, and that's what made it great. So we get into Sunday, and this is where the third piece of the trifecta happens. So we all know at noon, that's when that's when the statue's going to get unveiled, and they open the carousel at 10 o'clock. So if you weren't on the trolley ride, you weren't left out. So you get there at 10, you could ride the carousel again, which was really cool. So Kim and I got there, saw Tom, talked to him for a few minutes, and eventually the time got close. We all went up to watch the unveiling. Now, I'm not going to recap the unveiling because it's well documented and filmed, but the thing is, I don't want to minimize its effectiveness and how important it was, because it would just be redundant if I just repeated it here. But after the unveiling took place, we milled around a little bit, Kim and I, trying to figure out what to do the rest of the day. So later on, we met up with Tom yourself and Emmy, Zach, and some others at Iron Agave for food and drink. Harold and Andrea Clark showed up, but then they had to leave early because they had an early flight out the next morning. So that led to a round of hugs and a promise to keep in touch. Kim and I hung out for a while, and then we went over to the craft to meet up with Jim Benson and Scott Skelton. Kim and I sat down with Jim's wife Lisa, Scott Skelton, Stuart from Dublin, and Andy Valentine. We had a few drinks and appetizers and just talked. For 3 hours, we talked about Serling, Night Gallery, Colombo, other TV shows, stocks in the stock market, all sorts of stuff. And it was a really cool moment because, honestly, I don't have a lot of opportunities to talk with people who got as much in-depth knowledge on books that I read, especially the authors themselves. It was magical. I could talk about that all night long. It was great. So then Tom, Emmy, and Zach came over. They were taking off because they needed to get ready to leave the next day. It was a really sad moment, to meet all three of you and then have you all leave. It was sad. We all enjoyed Serling Fest, and we all enjoyed each other. It was really cool. I guess what I'll say in closing is pretty much this. There's so many more stories to tell, and I could go on and on. But the point is, I came to Serling Fest looking for my homewood. It wasn't band concerts or cotton candy, but a camaraderie and a search for those who share the beliefs and ideas Rod Serling taught us through his storytelling. I did go home again, and it was wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Joe. I think that was a great overview of the whole trip. And there's names in there that, they all mean a great deal to me. And I know them all. I think some listeners will know some of those names. Like, everyone knows Uncommon NASA. Everyone knows Harold Clark, I would imagine, if you listen to the Jordan Peele episodes especially. People like Grace, who's been a long-time friend of the show, very important member of our community. There's so many. And I think it's great that a community is building up really independent of me now. People are becoming friends, and it's not just because I'm there or I'm doing something. It's because, you know, they've met each other and they've had those connections and so on. So thank you, Joe. Thank you for everything. And thank you to the people who brought me gifts there as well, which I never expect anything like that. But Joe brought me like this beautiful Canamit statue, which sits proudly in my office now as I record the podcast. Harold Clark brought me this gorgeous kind of piece of artwork, which was Twilight Zone characters depicted on postage stamps, which was just gorgeous, which is going up in here soon as well. Roger Scala gave me this really cool replica of the Twilight Zone pinball table, which sits proudly in here as well. So thank you to him as well. Anyone who took the time to come over, just know that you made my day by doing that. And if you didn't come over and say hello, but you were there because you wanted to see the presentation and because you listened to the podcast, then you made my day as well by just being there. Now, a few people have contacted me and said, well, Tom, we want to hear what your presentation was. You haven't put it on the podcast. So there's a couple of reasons for that. The first being that I used something on that presentation that I had to get permission to use. And I got permission to use it, but I only really got permission to use it in that way on that day. So in order for my presentation to go on the podcast, I need to kind of tweak it. And this thing will be represented. This all sounds very cryptic, I know. This thing will be represented, but I just need to do a few things in order for it to be something that I can play here. I can't play the thing itself. So I know that all sounds very cryptic. I will explain it in the future, but basically, because it was a Christmas-themed presentation, that's going to be released on Christmas Day. I'm saying that for the first time here. So in December, I'm going to be doing the Twilight Zone Advent Calendar again, because that was a great fun success last year. So people in the After Hours Club, I'll be putting up a post soon so you can pose your Twilight Zone questions. And then that will all lead to the last door on the Advent Calendar on Christmas Day itself, when you will hear this presentation. So it'll be more produced. It might even be tweaked in various ways. It'll be more of a podcast type experience than when I did it on stage. Okay, so that is our Serling Fest coverage. Now, if you've been waiting patiently for it to be over, maybe the Serling Fest stuff hasn't been your thing, I kind of feel it's important to take these moments because we are almost at the end of the Twilight Zone, and this was a great celebration of Rod Serling, and I think it's completely justified to take those detours. But of course, we all like to get back to the main show as well. So let's go over to Rod Serling to find out what's coming up next.
Rod Serling, creator of The Twilight Zone, will tell you about next week's story after this message.
And now, Mr. Serling.
On our next outing, Charles Beaumont comes through with another delightful flight of futuristic fantasy about a society of another time in which you literally can't tell the players without a scorecard. They all appear in an identical mold. Colin Wilcox, Richard Long, and special guest star Susie Parker appear in a program called Number 12 Looks Just Like You. I hope you're around to catch the similarity.